Good morning. Making sure that this is working, yes? And
Yes.
yours? Excellent.
Yes.
All right, we get a little bit of feedback here. We're going to talk about game changers. There's a meme running around here, something about this changes everything. And somehow Lenka knows about it, somehow Felix knows about it. You're going to have to check with them. Anyway, we are talking about what are game changers. Game changers are things that you can make inside your own company. Right? This man made a game changer and changed an awful lot of stuff in technology, not just the web. Game changers can happen in politics as well. Game changers are either external or internal. And we're going to talk about the internal game changers. These are things where you can turn the knob. All right? External game changers just happen to you, but you can turn the knob on the internal game changers. A game changer is something which you introduce into either a system or process that changes everything. So it's not just something that tweaks some of the knobs. This changes everything, right? And I still don't know what the meme's about, but this is good. Anyway. You can change it with your product or service the way Gates did and the way Jobs did and so on. You can do it with the revenue streams or even your pricing model and how we charge for things. In your industry, the game changer was things like Craigslist, which said the price is zero. Target markets can change significantly around the world, and you can choose which ones you approach. Therefore, it's also an internal game changer, not just external. But of course, external factors come into play. If 1.3 billion people show up in India and are suddenly now part of the advancing market, then they become a target market for you. If that doesn't happen, you can't choose them. And finally, there are the business processes. The business process game changer is what we're going to talk about today. They include what you can do with your product and service, with your revenue streams, the target markets, business process, and now we finally get to change the screen. I thought we had that one fixed. Anyway.
Changes everything.
It does. It changes everything. Tell them about it.
All right, starting with the executive game changer. The core of all business process is your culture. That may surprise you. Some people think it's the accounting, some people think it's the marketing values, but it's the culture that drives everything. So if you can go to the next slide.
Absolutely. Culture is usually thought of as soft metrics and everybody gets all mushy about it and so on. What we're here to say is no, we're just playing games with words. Get over the words. Culture drives everything.
So, next one, start our little animation. Let's talk about culture.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. So your corporate culture starts from within, and it has to do with what your corporate values are, what your personal values. We'll have more about that this afternoon in the workshop. And from that, you derive your communication effectiveness, because it is very important to drive your culture through the organization from the top down to every person that deals with your customers. Next, please. And that brings you to a single focused attack on your goals, which again derive from your values through your culture to your goals, and you have optimized your chance for success.
Right, and I would totally agree, and if you can't clarify what your culture is and hire for it and then instill it in every single human in the place, you don't get to effective communication. And part of your culture should be about communication and what you require of that. And folks who are not comfortable with it don't resonate with your culture, right? You can't get to a single focused attack on anything until people are communicating really tightly. And we'll get into this from a much closer level rather than the 30,000-foot level, both now and this afternoon. But this is the general trajectory. The administrative game changers are about driving communication. In your companies, you have administrative, technical, marketing, and executive functions. The executive is actually part of administration. It essentially runs from there. So you kind of have three pieces, and executive hangs on to administration. Inside the administrative sector, those are the folks who are required to drive the communication down through the system. Every single person, let's go play with our little funky thing here again, right? Every single person has to know which metrics matter to them, and you, as the executive, must not get stuck in the weeds. I find this again and again. By the way, Ann and I do this for a living now, and we have a lot of case studies that show that this kind of stuff does change the bottom line. I mean, like instantly will change the bottom line. If you know which metrics to track, and we talked about this last time in Prague, for those of you who are there, right? The metrics that matter for an executive are significantly different than the metrics that will matter for the bottom line guy inside marketing or in technology in your IT departments and so on. But everybody in your business must be tracking what the heck they are doing. Everyone is responsible for one of those. They pass that on to their team lead, or you might even call them department heads, depending on the size of your company, and those folks coalesce and send it to you. Now, you, I'm assuming, is a CEO. There will be a few yous in here who are COOs. It is the job of the COO, right, or whoever name, whatever name you want to give these people, to take all of that information, to coalesce it, in other words, aggregate it, and then to create actionable knowledge from it. Data is interesting, but it is useless until you create actionable knowledge from it. And when you've done so, you make decisions based on the knowledge. It's up to your COO to say, what's going on in IT now? How far along are they? What do their Gantt charts look like? Where are they in progress? What does it really take in terms of time, human capital, and money to develop this piece of whatever software we're doing, or to maintain the site, or how many tickets are there, and how long did it take the average ticket to get finished, and are there more tickets in this sector going? All of that little stuff goes from one to the next to the next. The same thing will happen in marketing. Over at Moz, which I noticed wasn't even part of my resume this time, which is kind of cool when I got an introduction. I'm also the co-founder at Moz, formerly known as SEO Moz, the world's largest provider of digital marketing software. When we run metrics at Moz, even the person who answers the phone, who does the reception stuff, has metrics that they report. They tell us how many calls came through that week, how many of them were junk or spam and just salespeople, how many of them were directed to the marketing department versus the IT department versus the customer service department. They also tell us how many were personal calls and so on, and we have it over percentages. When we see stuff changing, that's when we become interested. Right? In general, it's not terribly interesting to get that data, but when we see significant changes, we begin to know something's up. Metrics that matter. You move on to something called clear vision then, right? Most of you probably feel pretty muddled in the most of your day-to-day stuff. What's really going on? You have a feel for it, but you don't have hard metrics, you don't have clear vision. It's that simple. Once you have that clear vision, you then have to send it back down to your organization so that everybody in the office gets it. These reports that we get at Moz go to every single person in the organization. There are now close to 200. Okay? Not everybody wants to hear it, not everybody wants to read it. That's okay, but everybody has access to it. Therefore, there is never somebody who doesn't have access to the information they do need. It goes in very simple reports, lists, usually coming out of IT, and charts and graphs coming out of marketing and customer service. They'll tell you what kinds of tickets come in, what kinds of issues there are, how long it took to resolve them, and so on, and it comes color-coded. The first time, it takes you a while to create these kinds of things. It also takes you a while to read it the first time in the graph and chart form. After that, you can tell what's going on and assess your corporate structure and its health within moments. Intelligence-based decisions are derived from that. If you really aren't doing this throughout the business, you're not making, if you will, intelligence or intelligent data-driven decisions. And if you do, you seriously do optimize your chance for success. This one piece, among all the others that we talk about, this one piece is the game changer. Driving the metrics through the entire organization and being a metrics-driven company. Hey, Ann, you're on. Talk about technical. Ann's developed. She hates dev. That's why she gets to do this one.
Is there anybody in this room that doesn't have to deal with development? Right. Yeah. That's the nature of being internet businesses. We work with internet businesses exclusively because that's the space we know. And I am known for saying I hate development. So how do you drive accountability? I mean, basically, programmers, they're wonderful people. They're brilliant. They're technicians and they're tinkerers, and they will tinker endlessly. So how do you make them accountable? How do you make them responsible? so that they get things done? Well, the first thing is you really have to do priority-driven scheduling. That is not a ticket list of all the things that are broken with red, green, and yellow coloring on the squares. It is actually making the scheduling have something to do with which are the red, urgent things and which are the less urgent. And for instance, what is impeding the next iteration of your website, what you absolutely have to get done. So you have to do priority-driven scheduling. And along with that, you can't leave your dev team out on their own. They need a lot of internal mentoring and support. You need to have the senior people bringing along the junior people so that you have redundancy in your dev team, because there's nothing worse than having your number one developer, who's the only one that really knows how it all fits together, get sick. Or have a family crisis, or worse, get hit by a bus. In the States, we have a phrase, and maybe some of you know this, called the number bus company. And that means how many people would it have to get hit by a bus to bring your company to its knees. And if you only have one lead developer who's not developing younger talent or newer talent below him, you have a number one bus company, and that's not a good thing. So next, I think the next one is my favorite, collaborative sprint process. It's very important to involve your development people in the decisions of the scheduling and to develop in sprints, to pick what is actionable, what you can actually, they agree that they can accomplish within, say, 2 weeks, and then hold them to that, and then go on to the next thing.
How many are running a sprint process development system in their own companies at this point?
Also, sometimes Scrum.
Okay,
Anybody doing Scrum?
Right, how about Scrum?
Yeah.
Okay, similar. So there's some of you, but there are a lot of folks in here who are not doing that yet. This could be a major game changer in your process. If you run those things in sprints, I always liken it to going into a room with your children and saying, clean up the room. They really cannot. It's not that they don't want to follow your instruction, they cannot. They can't see it, right? A Scrum process or a sprint process is really like going into the room and saying, all right, let's find all the books and put them on this shelf here. That much they can do. Then they can find all the socks and maybe even all the dirty laundry and put it over there. That they can do. By cutting it down into pieces and then holding them accountable for it within a single time frame, they get good at two things. One, actually accomplishing what you need them to do by cutting it in pieces, but two, they get better at estimating. Most of you, how many of you had overruns in time, in the estimated time it took to develop X? Mm-hmm. Everybody, pretty much, right? I mean, if you're going to develop something, it's going to overrun. How tightly can you get, scheduled? The answer is only if you practice, and they never practice inside an IT department until they do this stuff with this collaborative Scrum or sprint process.
And another important thing is to involve somebody from marketing with your IT division. For approximately 30 years now, I have been trying to bridge IT and marketing, and I'd like to say I've had limited success, but at least some success. They don't trust each other. And so if you can get a marketing person to sit on the dev team, and that will also provide a conduit for that communication that we talked about earlier with between your IT department and the marketing department.
Right. We actually did solve it at Moz, which was quite extraordinary, and it continues to this day. But again, we have close to 200 people at this point. We were able to solve it very early on at as little as maybe 20 people. We began to see that dev and marketing were splitting up, if you will. They were segregating because they segregated into sectors in which they sat, and then they became real departments. And so in order to bridge that, we did two things. The first thing was to create a process by which everybody hung out together, had coffee, whatever, and talked about things. We have a single goal, so we were working on that constant communication process, and with the single goal being very clearly driven from the top down, we were after, at the time, say, 10,000 subscribers to our software platform, right? And if 10,000 subscribers was the goal, then marketing was breaking that down into pieces, so they had sprints. Well, we're going to get to 1,500, or we're going to get to 7,500, or whatever. I don't remember at what point we began to play that game. But they had the next goal up, and then they said, all right, now we have some ideas about how we're going to do it. And they had 3 or 4 ideas. But the first people they took it to were the engineering staff. And they said, so these are the things we're thinking about. And engineering said to them, well, idea number 1 and 2, it's like 6 guys, about 3-4 months. Maybe number 3 will take close to 8 or 9 months, take about 4 or 5 guys only, because they had an idea of how many people they could put on it and how much, you could play with it and so on. I said, yeah, but that other idea, that's like 2 guys by Friday. Okay, we're going 2 guys by Friday. It's never really quite that clear. But the conversation itself allows you to choose the optimally, available path for marketing, and then marketing understands what it's going to take on the dev side. The dev starts writing it up and gives them a full quote, if you will, almost like building a house. You get kind of an idea, and then you get a full quote. So once you've done that sort of thing, you get optimized chance for success. The second thing we did, by the way, if your organizations are large enough, was to actually put in, if you will, a middle road, a communicator between the two, so that they speak engineeringese and they message back and forth to marketing. And the last thing we were able to do, when we had enough folks, right around the time that we had about 60 or 70 people finally, it took us until then to do it, was to take an engineer and assign them to marketing. We have a front-end developer who is a marketing department member, not an IT member. They actually don't hang out there. And at this point, we have now 3. The problem is that marketing needs stuff now. They need it yesterday, because that's how they launch their stuff, and that's how they change it, and they get their crap done. But engineering gets bumped into all the time. And when marketing is always bumping into engineering, right, that's life by crisis management, your larger projects fall behind. You will never get that next web site developed, the next iteration, if you keep bumping into engineering. Marketing game changers. Want to play?
Go for it.
All right. So we start with community. You heard about community, let's see, it was yesterday, right? We heard about community yesterday from Andrew, right? And I talked about that as well last year, and I've been talking about it for several years. Community or brand community marketing is, if you will, the next big thing. Right? It's like social, local, mobile, and so on. Brand community marketing is really where that pillar sits in marketing now. And the reason is there is a game changer out there, and it is this thing. The companies of the late 20th century, right, kind of second half, even 2/3 of the 20th century, were all about in-your-face advertising. They were about sending the message out, about bombarding the public with the brand and the message. It was interruptive advertising. So we have a saying at Moz that says, it stops you from doing what you want to do in order to sell you stuff you don't need. Right. Inbound marketing, which is what we're all involved with over at Moz, is the idea of being available with the information that a consumer needs to make their decision when they want you to talk to them. Not when they want to talk to you, but when you should talk to them, right? And when that invitation is given, then you begin to give that information out there. And that's what content marketing is about. It's a piece of that. However, brand community marketing is about corporate culture inside your organization. There are still a lot of huge brands who are getting it wrong. They think they can create a brand community without having any culture inside the organization that anybody would want to be a part of. A community, by its very definition, is shared values, shared goals, and shared experience. And shared experience trumps the other two by a country mile. Those of you who heard me on the stage, I think it was in, where? I don't know.
Prague?
Was it Prague?
Prague?
I don't know. Maybe it was in Amsterdam. I'm not sure. Whatever. Those of you who heard it then, right, we talked all about community marketing. It starts inside your corporation. It's how you treat your people, how they treat each other, and how they, by definition, will treat all of the consumers and customers and clients. They have their own, for example, voice on the social web. You don't tell your people you will tweet under the corporate name, or you must not have a Twitter or Facebook account. You can't talk about the company. That very idea says that your company sucks. It means that you don't want them to say what's going on there because what's going on there is foul. Right? If you have a transparent and, if you will, authentic discussion with your people about how you treat them and what they need, and they do the same thing and so on, and you have honest discussion going on around it, people actually want to work for your company. Right? That is what makes community, brand community stuff and culture itself a game changer. When people want to work for your company, you don't have to pay top dollar for it, that talent, right? You don't have to train that talent and worry that they're going to leave for a dime, at the to go to the next guy's company. They want to work for your company. There are other metrics involved. That's very valuable. Once you have a corporate culture in which other people want to work inside it, they also talk about how wonderful it is to be part of this community of people that happen to be working together inside your corporation. That stuff leaks out. In other words, the truth will out. And when it does, other people outside will vibrate to the same resonance, if you will, right? To the same vibrations as what's going on in your company. And when they do, that creates your corporate brand, and it creates your brand community. If whatever goes on in your office is this, and there are a lot of companies that do this, I don't know, rock music companies, all kinds of companies, right? People who resonate this way don't match. They are not your client. It's not the right stuff. Those of you who do know the brand of Moz, how many Mozers do we have in the room? People who do know the brand of Moz? Okay, just a few. But those of you who know the brand of Moz know we're kind of about this cute robot, Roger Mozbot, and stuff like that. I mean, we kind of sing Kumbaya, right? We're all warm and fuzzy. You don't need a warm and fuzzy corporate culture to succeed at this game, right? Nobody would have accused Steve Jobs, whom we put up here before, as having that, game changer, right? Nobody would have accused him of being tag fee, which is our term at Moz for the things that we stand for. Nobody. And the reason was that he was, one, in no way tag fee and sweet and cuddy and all of that, but he drove a culture about the simplification and elegance of technology and its integration into human life with ramrod straight, forthrightness. Those who resonated followed. And it created an extraordinarily strong culture, and it survives past his time. That's what you're looking for. You drive that culture from the inside, it resonates outside, and those who agree will follow you. It's a people-driven culture, and it breaches that corporate veil. In other words, the human beings inside your company have voices that go out to the other people outside of the company, right? People, for example, again, who know Moz and so on, they know Jen Lopez, who runs the community management system. They know her as a human being. They know when she got ill, they followed her along, they all wished her well, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's a human being that was working there, right? Then there are other human beings inside the company. We send them out, and this is the tactical stuff. You can take notes on this one. Send your people out to speak. In other words, prepare them to do so, to share what they know in the circles that matter to them. It isn't to your target market. You guys are running classifieds, whether it's B2B or B2C. It's highly unlikely that the guy in your technical department who is, running the front end or the back end development has something to say to the guy who wants to sell, a bicycle to some other guy, or some mummy who wants to sell her pram to another mummy, right? That's not what we're talking about. But that guy should be able to speak to other IT people about how he built your system, right? About how he did whatever he did for your software. That makes sense. It increases the value of that person. In other words, you are creating more value inside that human being and allowing them to optimize their talents. If you know something well enough, you can teach it. Your people should be teachers. If not, send them out to learn to begin with and then let them teach. Not everybody's a public speaker. That's okay too. There are places where IT guys just hang out together and they chat, and those are meetups. Send them out at least that far. What we're saying is get them out and let them talk about how extraordinary it is to work for someone and with a team that optimizes their value on the planet, and how wonderful it is because they will attract other amazing employees when you need them. Okay? In addition, the brand of the company will spread. The customer-employee communication continues not just through marketing, but through every division, as I just explained, through IT. And when you do that, you create a brand culture and then a brand community that optimizes your chances for success. And we're kind of tight on time. What time do we have?
We've got 15 minutes.
We have 15 minutes, so I am going to tell this one piece. And I've said this, I think, quite a bit, but it bears repeating in case you weren't here for it. Brand community or social media communities and so on that we keep talking about often just get confused in the language. First of all, social media is media, it's content, all right? Social platforms are where we put that stuff. And a social platform is not the community itself. It is not what's interesting. It does not matter if you have 1 million fans on Facebook or 1 million followers on Twitter or any such thing. It's one thread or one strand of hair, and I can break that in a heartbeat. All right? It's just you talking to them. It doesn't much matter if they talk back to you, although that's a nice metric and your people in marketing should be tracking it. It's not something you should worry about because it's that small a piece of information, although so many people do track that. Here's when it becomes interesting. When the people that are connected to you, these 1 million people that are going to be your fans on Facebook, when they start talking to each other, that's when it becomes interesting. You don't have a community until the humans involved in it are talking to each other. And they're not talking to each other about you. They're talking to each other about the experience of being who they are and what they do and what life brings to them. When they start doing that, but they've come to your house to have the conversation and the party, when you are the one in the middle and they have all shown up to do it, that's when you have a brand community. You become the center of conversation for that subject around the planet. That's what you're after. Make sure that you've built a house for people to do it in. That means if you're running a classified site, you might also want to consider having a place where people have this kind of social communication going on, right on your website. If not, it can happen in your summer house over at Facebook. It can happen in your winter chalet over at Twitter. It can happen on Google+, and it can happen over at LinkedIn. It can happen anywhere it's got to happen, but it's your house. It's under your brand. You are the one who is fostering the conversation. And that means you don't publish content that is declarative. You publish content that has open-end questions. Don't ask me any questions I can give you a yes or no answer to, or I've said yes, and I'm out of here. Make sure it's an open-end question. Make sure you've asked somebody's opinion. You're on, Ann.
As we have been saying, it all comes back to your culture. And these are, or we repeat, these are not soft metrics. Your culture is everything. Your culture is your operating system. There are all sorts of different takes on operating systems. There's the enterprise operating system. Mm-hmm. Even years ago, there was management by objective. They're all different ways of implementing your culture because the culture is where it all begins. One of my favorite examples was the 2008 Obama campaign, where the culture was very clear, the goals were very clear, the objective was, of course, very clear, but the culture was such within the campaign that every piece of information, every bit of empowerment of the people in the campaign went right down to even the front level Twitterers and email responders and it was very clearly driven from the top. So the culture is everything, and that's what this illustrates with your executive level. Here is basically your operating system with your different divisions and the different functions that they do, but it all comes from the culture from the executive level. So that is the executive game changer, is to propagate your culture throughout all of your departments, right down where, and all of your functions, down to where they deal with your customers or your clients or the people that are going to make you money. And that is how you optimize for your chance for success.
I would agree, and I would also say that in terms of the executive, you folks are the executives in your business, and it's up to you to sort that out. So that is about vision, mission, and goals, and to make sure that everybody on the inside the organization understands what that's about. Otherwise, they can't spread the word and tell the rest of the world what it's about. I would suggest that what you do for a living has nothing to do with classifieds. It may have something to do with peer-to-peer or C2C, as we say, as well. It may have something to do, therefore, with connecting humans with their needs or fulfilling the needs of the planet or whatever it is. But figure it out, because there is a larger goal here, and it's beyond just making the money will follow. If you can't voice it and you can't get clarity around it, nothing else is going to happen. Culture defines everything. Look at that. That's interesting. I didn't know that thing was going to spin.
How about that?
That's so cool.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. That's really very cool. Right. Culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. One of the folks who runs one of these implementation systems that I know says that all the time, and then I think that's pretty darn true. It does affect every part of your business. And if you are very clear about not just your mission, vision, and goals, but rather how you wish to implement them, from there, every decision is made in an appropriate way. At Moz, we have something called tag fee, and it's just a made-up word that stands for transparency, authenticity, generosity, fun, empathy, and exceptional work. You should have one as well, and it is a good idea to create it as a word, if possible, or a sound or something. And here's why. Because the word tag fee is used in the office every single day by a number of people whenever they make a decision. Is it tag fee or is it not? It's that simple, and you have created an entire conversation, a paragraph of information into a single sound that everybody understands and can easily use again and again. What I'm saying is keep it simple and make sure that it is used on a regular basis. Otherwise, you can't hold that over a long period of time. It's nice to have an off-site meeting to discuss all of these kinds of things and say, all right, this is our goal, and we're going to achieve these kinds of things within the next 10 years and 5 years and so on, but you can't keep the thread going unless it's a daily conversation. In terms of things like ops teams and management and so on, how they manage your other members of your organization, that's kind of your HR department and so on, is of interest, but it's far more interesting to talk about how you hire people. If you have a particular culture in your organization, having only one person who does not resonate with it can put ink in a clear, glass and screw up the whole thing. And again, that's whether you're singing Kumbaya or you're running something with the rigors that Steve Jobs did, or if you're running something like the Boeing Company, which runs far more like a military organization than anything else. But whichever place you're running, you have to have the same kind of resonation among the people that work there. That gets pretty rough when you get to the size of Boeing, but oddly, they manage it, as does Airbus and folks like that. At Boeing, for example, the president of the commercial airline group made a speech to his people of well over 100,000 people at the time, and I think it's now only 80,000. But that's quite a sum of human beings. And he said, if we aspire to the same exact performance levels of Federal Express, which is 99.997% on-time delivery, if we aspire to that, we will kill only 1 million people a year. Go make airplanes. Right. Want to take that flight home? Right. The exacting requirement of construction of an airplane is daunting. And yet, you can rip the side off a 747 and watch yourself land. It's happened in Hawaii. Extraordinary. On the other hand, you could put a bullet hole through the back end of an Airbus and, kiss your rear goodbye. So think about it, people. Yeah. Hey, it's happened. I mean, it's, So these things are obviously anecdotal, and who knows what happens the next time around. But the point is, you can run any culture you wish, but you can't have somebody who doesn't aspire to it, right? It will destroy product, and it will destroy productivity. So we've got some tenets over at our place, and Anne actually helped to put it together at the end and came up with that last piece. So it did create a word around it, and it kind of fell into place. It's what we believe in, and this is what we implement inside companies. And the bottom line is the excellence kind of stands for, if you will, really financial excellence. Our bottom line is to make sure that other companies make money when we get in there and do something. So we created something around it. You should do the same. We've got a number of references for you here, and we've got just tons and tons of other books if you'd like, as well as things online and perhaps even blogs around the process of developing a corporate culture that operates a company efficiently and will again address what I call the assets and attributes of successful companies as well as the assets and attributes of successful CEOs. That's the game changer. If you attain the assets and attributes of a successful CEO, you can run a successful corporation. Let's talk.
We should say, go ahead. Walk over the first question. I just want to say that this afternoon in our workshop, we'll be giving away 2 copies of my book, the International Marketing book, Search Marketing, and
2 of the other ones.
We're going to give away both of them?
Oh, I guess so.
Okay, we're giving away books, so come to our session. We'll figure out how to do that, how to do the drawing later. And I also want to point out that you saw the radio show on the references. That's our show that Gillian started.
Yeah,
back it up. That's that one.
That's right.
That one?
Should be. Back up. It doesn't love you.
No, it doesn't love me at all. The CEO coach on Webmaster Radio. Gillian started that 5 years
down
ago
there.
to get some answers, to talk about mistakes. What we have learned mostly over the years by making mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
And tell them, Gillian, you've
Yeah.
been at that show
What I
for
say
5
is-
years.
Right, exactly. CEO Coach Podcast is a gift I gave to myself. I don't get paid to do it. I don't pay for the privilege. But it is put on by webmasterradio.fm. I strongly urge you to go pick up a few of them. You can download them through iTunes or through Webmaster Radio and, I don't know, a few other places now as well. So it's syndicated around the world. And when I walked through the morass of startup and things were very, very dark, I promised myself that if I ever walked out alive, I would give back. And I would give the answers to the questions for which I would have given my left arm to have known the answers, and nobody would or could tell me. It's all of my mistakes, and after 5 years, it's still going strong. I do it every week. So there's a lot of them out there. On the flip side, we also have a lot of case studies because we see this happening again and again, replicated in the companies that do succeed, and then again, failing in those that don't. So, interesting stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, Anne and Gillian, thank you very much. Questions? Dun, 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 dun. Come on. You can't all be fast asleep this early in the morning. Martha?
We forgot to give you guys coffee.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Anne. Always very informative and cut to the chase and make things, simplify the things that we know, but sometimes someone needs to tell us and give it a name. You talked about Scrum, and when we implemented it, it really improved things for our company, but what I saw is the tool we used is a little too complex for some of the smaller websites we have with teams that aren't as familiar with the whole concept, yet they need that. So we're using Rally, we've used Jira before. Do you have recommended tools for smaller development teams that are really learning on the job how to be a business manager of a WordPress site type of thing?
Right. Before we implemented things like Scrum and, and used real software, if you will, to manage it, we did do simple things like Basecamp and so on. But the process that really was a game changer for us in the earliest days was to make sure that there was a 5-minute stand-up every morning and a reporting in the afternoon. Everybody had to check in their software every single day. And when things got really down to the wire, I understand that the dev lead at the time also asked them to do it twice a day. So it would be a midday check-in, and then there would be another 5-minute, if you will, stand-up in which they would discuss things. And we were as little as 5 people there, and I think they started it even when there were only 3 in the dev team. So even without organized software to do it, Basecamp is free, right? So you can kind of run it a little bit, through Basecamp and so on. It was the process of checking in software, then reporting and discussing what had to happen next and getting through it. The object was that nothing would languish more than a few hours at the most without a solution. Because again, as Anne points out, these guys are tinkerers, or gals are tinkerers, and they will try to muddle through it, right? And it's good, and they should learn, but not on this time, right? If there's somebody else with the answers, you get those answers quick. So the meetup is huge when you're really, really small.
I have a question, and you talk a lot about case studies.
Yes.
What are the 2 dumbest mistakes you've seen, or the 2 most common mistakes in terms of all the work you've done, if you can, without mentioning names, of course?
That's okay.
Yeah.
The dumbest mistakes I see are having what we call wizards or idea people who don't have their business people. I think that's not an issue in this room because I think almost everybody here is really the business person who has picked up a business, is now saying, how do I find my next idea to move forward into the next decade? Because I purchased something, but it has to go that way. Every truly successful technology company that breaks the ranks and becomes, if you will, outstanding, disruptive or similar, had both. They had a visionary or a wizard, and they had a business person who could implement. Ideas are born a dime a dozen. You need the implementation. So I would say don't have one or the other.
And
You
in
must have
fact,
both.
that goes way before technology. I've
Yeah.
been in consulting with businesses for 40 years, and I remember companies in the retail space that did not have this necessary balance. It's sort of a left brain, right brain thing of the brilliant, inventive, creative person and the solid left brain numbers business management person, and you need both. You need both over and over again, and the most common mistake I see is that the brilliant technologist thinks, or the brilliant visionary thinks they can actually run the business. And
Not
in
so.
many, many businesses where I've been on the board of directors or been a consultant to, I see that person not willing to let go, which is the corollary error. There was one company I was closely associated with where the visionary, the inventor, simply wouldn't let go. The board kept trying to bring in a president, a managing director, a COO, and within a year, each one of those people was made to leave because the CEO was too close. And that's what we call a bad case of founderitis. And those are the things that stand in the way of optimizing your chance for success, and the commonest mistake. The second commonest mistake is not hiring for culture.
I would say,
Yeah.
you're probably right. Hire for culture first, you
Yeah.
can almost train everything else. It doesn't mean you hire for lesser skill sets, though, but do hire for culture. I would say there really is one more, though. It's
Yeah.
metrics-driven companies succeed faster, more clearly, and more quickly, and at higher levels than any other kind of company on the planet. If you don't know what to track and you're not tracking it,
Yeah.
you're never going to break the ceiling. And I don't know how high your ceiling is. You could make a really nice lifestyle business out of it. If you want to break into a scalable corporation and you want to succeed as a scalable corporation, you absolutely have to get the metrics in. And a metrics-driven culture is exactly what we're talking about, right? Culture is a soft word, right? Get over the word. It's about the actual stuff you do.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Ann Kennedy, Julia Muessig, thank you very much. They'll be around this afternoon and the rest of the day. Thank you.